This is Doc with Doc and Lefty. You're joining us here on webcast1live.com. Me and my co-conspirator, Lefty, a.k.a. Blake Lubinas.
Good evening, everybody.
Welcome you all to our show. We have a very special guest in our audience, or not in our audience, but we have a very special guest.
He is right here in the studio.
He is, and he came all the way down. And you know what? I feel privileged. Tom Shaw is becoming a legend in the Republican Party.
Holy smokes.
Yes, he is. He is a Tea Party favorite. He was sworn in yesterday. Is this your third term?
Second term.
Second term.
So you were Tea Party before the Tea Party was cool.
You could say that.
Yes, absolutely. So anyway, we have him coming in. We have a lot of things we can discuss. Tom was a co-sponsor of several of the bills that were introduced today. Do you want to tell us something about? Well, maybe we should start off with your background. What's your background? Where do you hail from, and how'd you get into politics?
Okay, well, I was born in Lorenz, Iowa, 1961, and raised there. Graduated from high school from Lorenz Marathon High School. Kind of kicked around for a couple years after high school, and made one of the best decisions in my life, and enlisted in the U.S. Navy. I wasn't sure if I liked the Navy or not, so I hung around for about 20 years just to make sure. So
yeah, just to make sure, because you can never make a rash decision.
Absolutely not.
Never.
You got to think it through. And of course, the recruiting slogan at the time was, "It's not just a job; it's an adventure." So I kept re-enlisting, looking for that adventure. So
Where were you stationed? Because that's around a little bit at the tail end of the Vietnam War, I imagine.
Well, it was in 1982.
Oh, 1980.
So,
way
82.
after that.
Yeah, it was
yeah,
after,
60.
yeah.
He was born in 61. I was thinking that I did my math wrong. I apologize to everybody about that.
Sure.
So what were you? Were you in that area still? Because I know that even 7 years later, there was a lot of issues with the Vietnamese government.
Yeah, and a lot of the views that I hold today were helped cemented during my Navy service. I was stationed in the Philippines. I was there in 1986 when Marcos was removed and the People's Power Revolution occurred, and so I saw that unfold before my eyes.
Mm-hmm.
How was that? Was that kind of weird being over there when all that was going on?
It was very strange. You didn't know which side the local military commanders were going to take. You didn't know the police what side they were going to take. So it was very tenuous.
Okay.
So along with that, in May of 1989, I was privileged to be on one of 3 Navy warships that made a port visit to Shanghai, China. And we were the first U.S. Navy warships to visit China since they went communist in the 40s. So,
all right.
If you remember what happened in June of '89, that was the Tiananmen Square. But
Yes,
there in May, we were already witnessing the large demonstrations and protests.
I think Blake was still in diapers.
In
about that
'89?
time. Yeah.
No, I was well out of diapers by then.
Well out of diapers?
Yeah, but
you just
I was-
wore them around just for fun or get the chicks or
I
what?
was certainly a young kid in 1989.
All right. So that was I remember Tiananmen Square. I was just finishing up my political science degree at Drake, and that was a giant discussion with one of your heroes, Dennis Goldberg.
Goldford.
That's right. Goldberg. I'm sorry. Because he's a wrestler. That's who I had in my head. So anyway, I apologize for messing that one up. And so that was a big discussion back then. And then after you got out of the Navy, what did you do?
Well, I wanted something a little less stressful, so I came back to my hometown and I joined the Lorenz Police Department, which I've been on the police department for 10 years now.
Oh yeah. All right. Good. So are you the captain there, or?
Well, I was the chief, but when I got elected in 2010, I voluntarily stepped down as the chief, so I'm just a patrol officer now.
Right.
The town needed a full-time chief of police, and with legislative duties, I just didn't think it was right to the town to be tied up. So,
but explain, because a lot of people here, even in Iowa, still a lot of folks that listen to different talk shows and or like to make themselves kind of avail themselves of the news, don't understand that in Iowa it really is a citizen legislature where you are at the legislature, but a lot of folks who are up there, maybe except for the leadership, have full-time jobs elsewhere. They're not at the State House all the time like you would think in Washington.
Right. People get confused. We really are a citizen legislature. We typically run a 4-month session, which we just started with the 85th General Assembly, and should be running 110 days into April. They can go longer. However, our pay does stop. We don't get paid if we do happen to go longer. So we try to get our business wrapped up in 4 months.
Mm-hmm. I think we should do something like that with the federal government. You get your business wrapped up, and if you don't get paid. Honest, because I think we would have had a debt ceiling bill by now. We would have had the fiscal cliff thing done on time.
Well, it's hard because you're sort of like imposing kind of an artificial deadline, right? You're saying, well, here's an arbitrary deadline. We're going to cut off your pay at this particular date. Well, we did that with the whole fiscal cliff thing, and they said, hey, you know what? We're not done. Let's 2 more months. I mean, it's
these dates need to be hard and fast and the rest of it. Anyway, back to Tom. He is our guest.
Yep.
Blake and I have been chewing to go at each other for a week now. So we kind of battle back and forth a little bit.
That's why I loved political debates.
Oh, yeah. Is that why you got into politics?
No, I got to tell you, I never ever thought that I would ever run for office.
Yeah.
And,
do you regret it at this point?
No.
Okay,
no, I don't
good.
regret it. There's certainly challenging days, and there's days you go home at night and you're so tired, and you're like, "Why am I so tired? I didn't really do anything today." But
Blake feels that every day.
It's fast paced, and there can be a lot of pressure in that. But overall, it's a very good, humbling experience.
So, what made you decide to run?
Well, in 2009, my wife and I visited the Capitol, and she's from Illinois, and she'd never seen the Iowa Capitol, and we walked out on the south lawn there, and there's a lot of new war monuments that had been put up since I'd been there as a kid.
Sure.
And I noticed there was a monument now from the Sons of the American Revolution. And I got to reading it and come to realize there's 40-plus veterans from the American Revolution that are buried here in the state of Iowa. And I turned to my wife and I said, if those men, those heroes of our revolution, if they were alive today, would they recognize the government that they had fought for? And we came to the conclusion that sadly they would not recognize most of it.
And so you decided to run then?
Who
was your opponent? Was it an already Republican? Did you have to have a primary?
I did have a primary in 2010, and I won my primary, and then I did have a Democrat opponent in the general election in 2010.
Did you stomp him up there?
I did quite well. Yes.
All right. Because there's not a whole lot of Democrats outside of Iowa City and Des Moines.
Well, except for when it's a general election, I guess. But
yes, that's true.
Yeah.
When they're voting for president, then they come out.
We're going to go take a break. Is it a 1-minute break? All right, we'll be back 1 minute. Our special guest is Tom Shaw. Oh, my goodness. What's your district?
I'm House District 10, which is Pocahontas, Humboldt, Calhoun counties, and a portion of Webster County.
He's up north. Way up north.
We can talk about that when we get back.
All right, we'll do.
Break.
Thanks for joining in. We'll be back right after the break. You're listening to Doc and Lefty on webcast1live.com every Tuesday from 6 to 7 p.m.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
It's like they want to get hit.
Need a body shop?
Minor Wreck Express saves you time and money.
This is Doc with Doc and Lefty. Of course, I am on the right. Lefty's on the left. We are here with our special guest, Tom Shaw, who is a representative from District 10 up in northwest Iowa. I hope I got that right.
Yes.
Great. Whew. So anyway, we were talking about why he was getting in politics, and he said, he was looking at the state house and became moved to go and stomped all over his Democratic opponent.
And with all due respect, it's not difficult to stomp on a Democratic opponent
No, it
in
isn't.
Northwest Iowa. There's just not.
Unless it's Leonard Boswell. He's a tough old bird. So.
I'm from Northwest Iowa. I grew up in Lamar's, and so I'm familiar with the area. Now, one of the questions I want to ask you, kind of getting into a little bit more of the meta political aspects of your job, is that the Republican Party nationally, I don't think it's unfair to say, is in flux. There's a lot of different voices and a lot of different cooks in the kitchen trying to figure out exactly where the party is going to go after what most people in the party have deemed a pretty shocking defeat in the general election. I don't think, the candidate Mitt Romney was pretty surprised. There are a lot of pundits out there that were pretty surprised. And so we haven't seen a lot of that flux necessarily in Iowa, but I do want to know, Northwest Iowa has a reputation for being very conservative.
Correct, yeah.
Have you seen that sort of, is it more homogenous conservatism now in the state of Iowa? Has that sort of coalesced around the more conservative factions, or are you still seeing a lot of like moderates, a lot of more lefty Republicans in the state, or has it kind of coalesced?
I guess for my district and surrounding my district there, I think when you say conservative, it doesn't just mean Republican, because the independents are conservative. A lot of the Democrats are very conservative when it comes to the life issue, the right to keep and bear arms. But amongst the Republicans themselves, I would say they are more conservative than, if you will, a Republican from the east or left coast.
All right, we're with Tom Shaw, representative from District 10. One of the articles that I read on, believe it or not, Fox News talked about how if Nixon were running today for office, how he would not fit in the Republican platform. What do you think about that statement? And can you? I mean, you remember more about Nixon than I do. So what would be your opinion about that statement?
Well, this discussion comes up in the Republican Party. I'm sure it does in the I know it comes up in the Democrat Party. Do you follow the platform, or do you represent everybody in your district? And so you walk that fine line on how you do that. I was straight up forward with what I believed in, and I had it on my printed material, and I made sure everybody knew where I stood. So it's easier for me to make those choices because I told them that's how I would vote and what I would stand for. To me, the party platform, if I'm going to be a Republican, I'm supposed to do what we, the people of the Republican Party, are asking me to do. And so I try as hard as I can to follow the Republican platform.
Okay. Now we're with Tom Shaw, representative from District 10. If you want to call in, ask him any kind of questions, ask Lefty and I any kind of questions, or join our conversation, it's 855-244-0077. What is your response to people that say that we need to start getting rid of our libertarian friends that make up part of our Republican Party? That there's been calls for that on Facebook, and there's also been calls actually nationally that we should get rid of our party, or part of our party. Do you believe in more in the bigger tent, or do you believe in more of a purist approach to our national approach?
Well, I believe in what Ronald Reagan said when he said a party cannot be all things to all people. A party has to stand for something. So when you bring up the presidential election, I didn't see too much difference between our nominee and the Democrat nominee. From a pure Republican platform, conservative viewpoint, we need to give the people a clear choice, and I don't think we gave them a clear choice in this last election.
Who, if you don't mind me asking, who did you support in the Republican primary?
I did not endorse any.
You didn't endorse anybody?
No, I did not.
Have you? And this is your second term. Did you endorse anybody in 2010?
No, I did not.
Oh, well, that was an off year.
That was
I guess
not a presidential year.
Did you support Governor Branstad? Like before he was
in the primary, I supported Bob Vanderplaats in the primary. Yes.
Okay. I guess like coming from the Democratic perspective, from the more liberal perspective, what always sort of like strikes me about how the Republican Party not necessarily has moved way to the right of anything. I think that there's a lot more sort of vocal calls for what we've dubbed social issues, rightly or wrongly. I think that there's social agendas on both sides that get a lot of airtime. But it is sort of interesting to me that you have sort of a classical conservatism on the Republican Party that talks about, and not just fiscal politics, but sort of, emphasizes tradition and nationalism. And I certainly don't want to, Doc and I have gone back and forth about nationalism. I certainly don't want to imbue that with any of the negative connotations that I have in the past, but sort of tradition and nationalism and values and that sort of thing, and then has sort of been kind of not invaded, but added the addition to the more libertarian, which sort of was what a lot of the Tea Party folks from the very beginning kind of glommed onto, was this sort of very fiscally conservative, like laissez-faire economic policy, but very social liberal, socially liberal, like a guy like Ron Paul saying, yeah, we need to save all the money and don't pay for anything, but heroin, yeah, legalize it. And so I'm wondering, if you could speak to a little bit of that, like that sort of division, if that division is oversold in the media at all.
Sure, and that's a very good point, because I guess I kind of walk that line too between the strict libertarians and, see, I'm from the camp, I guess I identify that all of our liberties come from God, and that we must recognize our Creator, because that's where our liberty's coming from. And I think that's kind of what separates my Christian view of our liberty from the strict libertarians. If you believe that your rights come from man and that the Constitution's what grants you your rights, then any man can take those rights away. I don't believe that the Constitution grants us any rights. What the Constitution does is secure our rights and supposed to keep the government from infringing upon our unalienable rights. So that is the big difference. However, there is still a lot of common ground that can be worked with between the two different philosophies.
Doc referenced the Big Tent, and that's also been something a lot of political pundits have been talking about with the Republican Party, especially after this last general election, that the Democrats did a much better job of sort of reinforcing their base, and then and bring
Well, and let's be fair. I'm going to interrupt you here. Let's be fair. Just Tom hit it on the head. Romney did a great job of alienating his base. I mean, honest. Let's just be straightforward.
I think that that's sort of that's been the conservative analysis since the loss. But I guess what I keep pointing back to is that one of the things that folks always told me during the primary about the Mitt Romney candidacy was, he seemed inevitable right from the beginning. I think there's this classic trope of Republicans, they nominate the next guy. You have your George W's, you have your John McCain's, you have your Mitt Romney's. And so the folks who were sort of dubious of Mitt Romney, when I would talk to them, like you and I had that discussion about Mitt Romney, where I said, man, I just don't think the conservatives are going to get behind him. And you said, and I don't know if you said this to me, but this is something that was echoed by a lot of folks I talked to. Well, it's going to be tougher, but people hate Obama so much that the conservatives will vote regardless, and the independents will come on board. And I think that's really what his staff was looking at during the election, if the campaign, if I'm not mischaracterizing it. And so, what was it about the campaign? Do the conservatives just not hate Obama as much? Did they miscalculate in that direction? Because I don't think they did.
Well, let's take a break, and we'll let Tom answer this when we come back. Again, we're with Representative Tom Shaw, who was kind enough to show up on short notice.
Very short notice.
And interrupt his legislative session today. Not necessarily, but, we like to throw that out there a little bit.
Sure.
And we'll be back in a minute, right after this quick break. You're listening to Doc and Lefty on webcast1live.com. We'll be back shortly.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling. We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
This is Doc with Doc and Lefty. Thank you for tuning in tonight. We're here every Tuesday from 6 to 7 p.m. on webcast1live.com. On the right is me. On the left is Lefty. We have brought in some extra brain power on the right side. His name is Tom Shaw. He's a representative from District 10. We were talking a little bit about how Romney kind of lost the staunch conservative vote. That's basically what the question was, right?
Well, a little bit, but also if it shouldn't have mattered, right?
It shouldn't have mattered.
I mean, if the conservatives hated Obama so much, wouldn't they vote for Romney regardless? Because there was nobody to split the conservative vote.
Yeah, so what's your take on that, Tom?
Well, first off, hatred's not a reason to go vote. That's not something to motivate somebody to vote. Just because you oppose one of the opponents doesn't get you motivated to go make phone calls, door knock, contribute donations, whatever for your candidate. And this gets back to what I said before, is a party has got to mean something. It's got to have some principles to it. And you have to stand behind those principles, and you have to explain to people and to the voters why you believe your principles are the way that, we should govern. And in this last election, I didn't see that happening. It just seems like, well, okay, President Obama believes in this, so I just believe a little less in that than what he does. So vote for me because you don't like him. That doesn't motivate people to go out and vote. Where you take a Reagan, in my lifetime, I guess he would be the conservative torchbearer. He very specifically would lay out his conservative principles, and it gave a reason for people to vote for him. And you've got to explain the difference to the voters, and when you're close to the other candidate and don't clearly distinguish yourself, you're not going to get the enthusiasm to get people to go vote for you.
I think that Mitt he was fighting an uphill battle the entire way from the trashing he took in the 2008 campaign, and the fact that a lot of the liberal commentators like to sort of make fun of the defining himself argument. Mm-hmm. I think it was probably at least a little bit true that he was the capitalist, muckraking, money-grubbing, greedy person well before he even got to the general election, and didn't do enough to kind of undercut that. And
Absolutely.
What's unfortunate about that, not that he lost necessarily, what's unfortunate about how campaigns work and how he wasn't able to parry that particular tactic was, from all reports, he is a fairly nice person and actually does a lot of things that would kind of cut against that Michael Douglas portrayal that he got from the Obama campaign. But
that again is up to his campaign to redefine him.
Yep.
You can't. He scared off the women's vote, and he scared off the immigrant vote. The Latino vote. And then he turned around and made every conservative that wanted to support him angry. And I can't, everybody knows I am a staunch fiscal conservative, and you can't go out and say the things Mitt Romney said and expect me to vote for you. Now, on to the next subject with Tom. Tom Shaw is kind enough to join us today. He's a District 10 representative. If you have any questions or want to call in and ask anything, our number is 855-244-0077.
Have we made it up to that Humboldt area yet? We're slowly branching out. So I don't think any of your constituents are probably...
Hey, we are worldwide. Yeah, I know for a fact I have two friends of mine listening from Ukraine.
Hey, we have callers from New York all the time, too. So,
yeah, we do have a caller from New York. One of our best callers is Tim. So yeah. I'm waiting for him to weigh in on something. Anyway, what's from the Republican side, what's the legislative agenda for this year? I know there's five bills introduced basically to get our fiscal house in order today. Mm-hmm. So can you tell us a little bit about those and what's going to be ahead further?
Yeah, just from the general House Republican perspective, of course, the budget talks dominate a lot of things, including property taxes. We did introduce, or will be introducing, a bill for a constitutional amendment that would limit the 99% spending prohibition to the December Revenue Estimating Committee report.
Okay.
Because currently, right now, you can also include any ending balance from the previous year. So if we were to spend everything legally that we could this year, with the December Revenue Estimating Committee, plus some of the ending balance from last year, we could actually grow government by 7%. And so the constitutional amendment, what that's saying is you can only use the December report. You cannot include unspent balances in that. Because if we were to spend 7% this year, obligate ourselves to new programs and that, how are we going to make sure we can maintain 7% the following year and so forth? So it was just kind of an oversight, I guess, when the original amendment was done, that nobody thought of that.
All right. Now, we're here with Tom Shaw from Iowa's District 10 up in northwest Iowa. One of the things that Kim Pearson had posted today are some of the things that weren't going to be said in the governor's state of the state. She talked about how the governor has actually increased spending, has actually not been able to go out and protect life like he promised, and has not been able to grow the jobs as he did. What did you think of the governor's address, state of the state, and what do you think of Kim Pearson's criticism?
Well, he did not address the gas tax. I think, that's been something that's been in the news. It's been there for a couple of years.
Yeah, because apparently it's got bipartisan support to increase it.
Because I've heard Republicans and Democrats on both sides, Republicans in the House especially, say that it needs to be done, and that's interesting because the governor has addressed it on the record in the past. So I'm going to confess. I'm going to make a confession to all of our listeners out there. I am a day behind. I get all of my news and all of my updates through podcast.
Straight off my Facebook feed.
Right. Yeah, through my podcast list. So I haven't listened to the state address yet, but it doesn't. Just a little. I read a little bit of reports and stuff, and it doesn't surprise me that it. I guess you don't want to put that in there, but it is interesting. It is interesting that he didn't talk about it because he's talked about it before.
Well, I think a lot of chief executives do that, whether governors, presidents, or what they like to throw those trial balloons out.
Yeah.
Gee, maybe we should think about this and then try to see what kind of response they get. And so I guess I was a little surprised that he didn't come out stronger in support of it, if that's what he wants to do. For the record, I'm opposed to it.
Good.
Probably doesn't surprise you, but I just believe there's other areas in our budget that we can use general funds to help fix our roads. I am not in disagreement that we have roads that need to be fixed and some bridges that need to be replaced. I just don't like the funding stream we have for it right now. And I think the Iowans are being misled just a little bit because they always talk about if we increase the gas tax, which is part of the road use tax fund, there's this impression that it's constitutionally protected, so you get the idea that all the money is going to be spent on concrete and asphalt. Well, the Iowa Supreme Court has ruled, and the Attorney General opinion is, what can that money be spent on? And the answer is anything that's roadway related. So that means they can build more rest areas, put wildflowers in the ditches, build, whatever.
All right.
It's roadway related, and I think we have too many roadway related expenses now, for one, and we could cut back on and have money to build roads.
All right.
Or repair roads.
We're with Tom Shaw from District 10. We're going to take a little bit longer break this time. We will be back after this break in about 3 minutes. You're listening to Doc and Lefty every Tuesday from 6 to 7 p.m. on webcast1live.com. We'll be back with Tom. We're going to finish up this discussion about the gas tax, because there's also a couple other taxes that people are kicking around. We'll be back in 3 minutes. Thanks for tuning in.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershad.
I'm administrative manager.
I'm the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
You know, if we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, you know, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, I mean, it's your home.
You know, it's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're gonna do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's gonna be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're gonna do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed right or it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you gonna say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're gonna be listening. They're gonna wanna know what your challenges are. Then they're gonna come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you know, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me, but is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though, I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm gonna take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed right or it's free or 100% money back.
enough said.
This is Doc with Doc and Lefty. Thanks for joining us today. Thanks for listening to our sponsors, Service Legends, and because that's what allows us to be able to do what we do, which is, you know, have some fun, educate people who want to be educated, and have great guests on our show like Tom Shaw, representative from Northwest Iowa District 10. Before the break, we were talking about the road use tax, otherwise known as a gas tax. And, you know, Tom is against it. I'm against it. I think Lefty's all for, you know, gouging the little man.
I want to tax and spend until my heart is content with the blood of working Iowans. That's
there you
what
go.
I want. I want to take your money. No, actually, in all seriousness, though, I do. What's curious to me, and to get the legislative perspective on this, because a lot of folks don't know, is that there is the general fund, mm-hmm. and there's the road use tax fund, mm-hmm. and they're separate things. They have separate accountings. They have separate everything, basically. And which Culver got in a little bit of trouble back when, what did we say it was?
It was something about the Iowa Patrol.
Yeah, the Iowa
something
Patrol.
like
We're going
that.
to pay the Iowa Patrol, patch some budget holes with the road use tax fund. Everybody's up in arms about it. Would it be better if all of that money was in one pot? We have things dedicated to, we have money dedicated to keeping up our interior infrastructure, but mm-hmm. would there be fewer fights? Would we maybe be able to stave off tax burden if they were all one pot? What do you think about that?
I think it's all one big shell game is what I think it is.
Oh, so all the separate stuff, the different accounting departments is all...
It's a shell game. And let's say we started a lottery, a special lottery, call it for whatever, that we were going to spend $500,000 more on, I don't know, waterfowl management. Okay. I'm just picking
mm-hmm.
an example. So the lottery does, and we currently budget $500,000 for that program. The lottery raises $500,000. You think, great, we got $1 million now to spend on the waterfowl. Wrong. What they're going to do is they're going to say, well, we used to spend $500,000 on this. We have $500 from the lottery. Now we can shift this $500,000 over to something else. We're still only spending $500,000 on the waterfowl. It's all a shell game. And you just have to look at the total numbers. And
Have you ever talked to Dave Vaught about any of this stuff?
I have not.
All right, because right, he's our state auditor. He's a great guy. If you ever have an opportunity to listen to Dave Vaught speak, this is the guy to listen to. Yeah. He looks like a rock star. He's handsome as a movie star, bright as Einstein.
He's fantastic on Iowa Press. Every time he's on, I make sure to record it.
He's absolutely.
I've heard him speak and I have a lot of respect for him.
Yeah, I keep trying to get him to come on the show. He's afraid of you.
He's afraid, right? I bet he is.
Yeah, he's not afraid of anybody.
I'm going to bring my calculator and a bulletproof vest because I don't think I can stand up to his numbers.
All right. Yeah. So the other thing that is on the agenda that I hear is property tax reform. Mm-hmm. Do you have any insight on that? Because what I hear is Democrats don't want to do commercial property reform because it would shift the burden to the individual homeowner, and the Republicans really want an entire reform package. Mm-hmm. How do you think this is going to go this year?
That is the $64,000 question. My experience is they've been working on this for about 30 years now, so this is not a new issue.
That's true.
Representative Helen Miller from Fort Dodge actually explained it the best to me that I could understand. Is there's three legs of the stool. You have ag, residential, and then commercial property taxes. And whenever you mess with one leg, the other two legs get very nervous. And that's why it's very difficult to reform any of this. And so I agree. We need to do something with commercial property taxes. We're second or third highest in the nation. That doesn't provide a good business climate. So we need to get them rolled down, rolled back. I thought we had a good bill in the House last year. We just couldn't get it.
What would happen? Because Lefty and I were talking about this last week. What would happen if we just gradually reduced them? Say, we're going to reduce it by 1% over the next 10 years. All of them, ag, home, and commercial. Because I can tell you, as a building owner now, I don't get anything from the city of Des Moines. The road is pretty awful looking. I don't get any extra services. People still break into my neighbors over there, steal their copper. I'm right up next against CenturyLink, their main building there. So I don't get anything extra or special. And yet I'm paying essentially what amounts to an employee and a half a month in wages in taxes. Yeah. So what would you think of that approach?
Well, that's kind of with the rollback, what we were trying to do over 6 years or 8 years. We had several different proposals out there last year. Right now, commercial property tax is taxed at 100% valuation, and so that's what we were trying to do, was roll back the valuation on it. There was some concern that the bigger property owners would be getting more benefit out of this. We even threw out a proposal that on the first 400,000, that would roll back quicker, and that still wasn't enough to satisfy the Senate, I guess. So it all boils down to what we can get agreed to with the Senate.
So if everybody is taking the same percentage of cut, then what does it matter who, if it's all equal? We're all Americans. We all have one vote. And if it happens to benefit me because I have a bigger building than, maybe Blake because he's got a smaller building, so what? Or maybe it benefits me more because I actually save more money in tax as opposed to him. I mean,
well, they try to, and I don't understand the argument either. The argument is they're getting more back in dollar value. They're getting a bigger check than a smaller business, but they're paying more in. So percentage-wise, they're not getting anything more back.
What is, I guess, and I don't have really an opinion about tax policy per se. I don't really follow it very much, so I'm just going to put that out there. But I know that the ag industry has been bemoaning their tax situation on ag land for, let's see, Iowa was in the Union in 1841.
yeah,
it's been about that. They've had the same complaint about the taxes, the ag taxes, and in Iowa's one of the few states left where ag is a gigantic portion of the tax base in the state. And so I guess my fear would be a wholesale reduction of ag would almost be worse than reducing commercial property, but they're also the economic driver for the, for a lot of stuff. So what's their tax position, and what do you see, especially coming from a more rural area of the state?
Well, the big concern has come from the cities and the counties because of the Time 21 formula, and with the property taxes, and then they're thinking they're going to get less money back for their road use funds and things like that, and they're also thinking it's going to impact on their city budgets. And so the cry went out, well, we're going to have to lay off all the police, and we won't have firemen anymore because of the evil legislature took all our money from us. And you get that on both sides. You get the scare tactics. But we had it built into our bill and our proposal last year that the state was going to pick up any loss as we're going through this transition. We were going to backfill to the cities and to the counties to make sure. And that's a very important proponent, because obviously we can't cut money to the cities right now. They're stressed.
Well, but that's where I disagree. I think, when you're under a budget stress, there's all kinds of things you can get rid of that aren't going to be, that aren't going to be critical.
Well, I mean, maybe in a city like Des Moines, Doc, but I got to disagree with you on that one, because
most rural firefighters are volunteer.
In the rural area.
So you're not going to lose firefighters.
You're talking about cities that were incorporated years and years. Like, take Adel, for example, was incorporated a long time ago. That has a particular government structure with a manager and their city council. I don't think Adel has a mayor. Do they? They might.
Well, I'm sure they have a mayor.
Well, some municipalities in Iowa don't. They have a manager and they have a council, and that's how they set it up, and that's how they wanted it, and that's what people vote for. And when you reduce budgets that way, then you're going to get rid of an elected official that way? That's the problem.
That's government for me. Is that right?
That's the problem. That's the state imposing its will on the municipality, and as a conservative, you should have a problem with that.
No.
Well, no, I don't believe that. I mean, there are always places to reduce the budget. I mean, let's just take Des Moines. Did we really need a bike trail down Ingersoll Avenue? No. No one in the businesses there wanted it, yet they got it. So there's money you could have saved right there. There's all kinds of little pork pet projects, no matter what you do in government, you can start eliminating that. Now, unfortunately, we have to take a break because, I don't like it when Lefty throws a bomb then runs. So I don't want to do it back to him. But I don't want to do it back to him. But we'll be back right after break and listen to Doc and Lefty. We were with our guest, Tom Shaw. We'll tackle life issues and Jan Brewer caving in to Obamacare after the break. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back in just a minute.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little, until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
It's like they want to get hit.
Need a body shop?
Minor Wreck Express saves you time and money.
This is Doc with Doc and Lefty.
It's devolving into a free-for-all.
It is. Thank God Tom came packing.
I know.
I haven't seen Lefty move that quick, docking and dodging. No, we're with Tom Shaw. He's from District 10 in northwestern Iowa. One of the other criticisms Kim Pearson had of Governor Branstad is, from her perspective, a lack of protection of unborn life. And that she doesn't think Governor Branstad has been doing a very good job of that. Now, I think Terry Branstad does a very good job considering the limitations that he has. As far as the office of the governor, he can't wave a magic wand and make everything great. He has to deal with liberals, which we both know is difficult.
It's pretty tough.
It's pretty tough. And so, what's your perspective on what her opinion is of that? Well, first of all, did you read her piece?
No, I did not.
All right.
No,
when you
I
get
didn't.
home and Facebook it, it's right there.
Okay.
So, but that was one of her criticisms.
Okay. Well, where I stand, I can tell you where I stand on the life issue. I believe in unalienable rights. I believe in our Declaration of Independence. It's supposed to be a plain as the nose on your face that we have the unalienable right to life and self-evident truth. And so I believe every life should be protected from the moment of conception or when a zygote is formed all the way through natural death. I believe that the life in the womb is just every much a person as you and I are right now. I find it extremely frustrating isn't the right word, disgusting, I guess, that we have that concept with the federal government when it comes to an eagle egg. I mean, they equate an eagle egg to an eagle and an eagle to an eagle egg, because if you even disturb the nest or break the eagle egg, you can do prison time and $250,000 fine. But a human life we have degraded. And then we get statements from like the chief of police in Detroit that says, gee, there's just no respect for life anymore. And, you know, you want to go to that great philosopher Homer Simpson, dull, we're killing them before they're even born.
I know that's one of Lefty's major.
We're killing them before they're even born, and then you want to say we have no respect for life. Well, of course we don't have any respect for life.
All right. One of the things, coming back a little bit to policy, one of the arguments that I had with Steve Dace way back when was he wants to take back the entirety of Roe versus Wade in one big chunk. And my position always is, if you can get the major opposition to agree to most of what you get, isn't that at least a step in the right direction? Which approach do you prefer, Steve Dace or the Mr. Reasonable Republican approach?
Well, we were discussing off air the Lincoln movie, and one of the scenes that shows the radical Republicans who were the abolitionists. So I guess when I said I identified legislators in that movie, I would identify myself as the radical Republican because I am an abolitionist when it comes to abortion. I believe there's value in every single human life. Actually, I have a bill ready that I plan on introducing with some co-sponsors next week, and on the anniversary of Roe v. Wade. It is in keeping with Roe v. Wade because Justice Blackmun said, if a state ever determines that life in the womb is a person, then of course all the protections of the 14th Amendment apply, meaning no state can make any law to kill, et cetera, without due process. That life in the womb has had no due process. It's innocent life. And so my bill, myself and some other legislators thought this through. We've been going at this all wrong. We've been trying to make it too complicated. So what we have done is we've taken our murder statute, and where it says, murder is, and it defines murder, one person taking another person's life with malice and aforethought, we've added another sentence to it saying, and for the purposes of this chapter, a person is defined as, and it talks about from the moment of conception and a zygote is performed all the way through natural life. And that any time you intentionally disrupt any stage of biological development, you are murdering a person.
All right. Well, we're with Tom Shaw, Iowa representative from District 10. Next thing I want to talk about a little bit is Jan Brewer kind of caving in. Bunch of two Republican governors have kind of caved in on the Obamacare statutes, and the reasons given is we're going to miss out on the federal money. Mm-hmm. And my Facebook post, I was very clear, Republicans feeding at Obama's trough. That's really what it is. And do you believe that these governors should stand up and go, well, listen, we're not going to be even more indebted to the government? Or do you believe that they should just go with the flow? Because, obviously there was a mandate in this last election what do you do? What do you do then as a Republican governor? Do you give up what you should do to remain in power, or do you do what you think the mandate is?
Well, that's interesting because what is the mandate? They haven't even finished writing the rules. So what are you standing up against? That's the whole problem.
And I think the loss of federal money is what they're standing up for.
But what I'm saying is how do you stop Obamacare as a governor or as a state? Because I have a lot of people emailing me and calling me saying, you got to stop this. What am I stopping? There's a tax on tanning salons. How can I, as a state, stop a federal tax on a tanning salon?
Yeah,
I mean, there's nothing a state can do. I mean, and this gets to the basic danger that I see of Obamacare. It's not whether more people or less people get health care. It's not whether it costs less, costs more. My basic objection to it is, for the first time in American history, you have to pay to be an American. You cannot merely exist as an American without having to pay. And if you don't have health insurance because you can't afford it, and you have a $2,000 fine to pay, if you don't have the money for the insurance, where are you getting the money for the fine?
Yeah,
and if you don't have the money for the fine, what's next? Are we having debtor's prison now? Or are we going to start?
Yeah, you see,
that's the whole mess of this whole thing. And so what are you actually stopping?
Yeah, and Blake hit on it. You can't really stop it.
You can't, and I mean, because federal law preempts, and that's
federal law only preempts if the states allow it to. And that's where we get back to
then how would you how would you stop it,
actually,
Tom?
right.
You can nullify it. If every state capital decided we're not implementing it, through their inaction, they could nullify it.
Well, I mean, but see, the fact of the matter is that we have a federal system, you have federal law, and you have the state law. And if the states weren't going to participate in the exchanges, sure, yeah, then there wouldn't be then the sort of like the whole premise of the cost curve and all that stuff would kind of be tough. But the federal legislation has come in and said the federal government has something to say about this area of policy being healthcare. Now, if the states wanted to come in and say, hey, we like our healthcare system just fine, we're not going to abide by the new federal rules, they can't do that. I mean, that was the whole argument with the Controlled Substances Act back in the early 2000s. Yeah. That's federal law preempts when the federal government says something about a particular area of policy. So states really are in a jam if they want to resist this, but it would come but I suppose what they would do is just not fund the exchanges, and I don't know if you've read the bill. I don't know, or read the law. I don't know if that's
they're looking at losing a bunch of stuff. The other thing that's in Obamacare is if you're working part-time and don't have insurance, you're the one that pays the penalty. That's one of the reasons why the businesses are cutting everybody back to less than 30 hours. And it's just I've told people I'm all for universal health care if we can fix the problems first, but this doesn't fix any of the problems and creates more. Now, we're going to be right back after the break with Tom Shaw and, of course, Lefty. Thank you for tuning in. You're listening to Doc and Lefty on webcast1live.com. We'll be back in a minute.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling. We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
We're back. This is Doc with Doc and Lefty. We're with Tom Shaw, representative of District 10. Blake was putting on his fangs and his claws, and I had to protect Tom from Blake going after him about the constitutional issues.
I have a deep seated hatred for the Constitution, as everybody knows.
Yes,
and
like to violate it every chance. So anyway, the next thing I want to talk about is that Lefty and I are both. I mean, we've discussed the Second Amendment, Sandy Hook, all that stuff ad infinitum. And last week, Joe Biden was talking about using executive orders to get around the Constitution and all that. And Blake and I talked a little bit back and forth about that. But yesterday, Obama came right out and said, there are 19 different ways I can issue an executive order to screw people out of their Second Amendment rights. He didn't say it that way, but that's basically what he said, right? I mean, and to get more gun control. And my perspective is, and I think Blake and I agree as far as what the law says. I mean, you think that there's plenty of ways to get around, or no, that there's not going to be a lot of ways to get around.
I'll just tell you exactly how it works from a legal perspective, okay? Usually, no one challenges executive orders, usually. In the history of the country, there have been 2 times. One when Harry Truman went after the steel companies back post-World War II, and one with Clinton back in 96. He did, I can't remember exactly what he did, but he tried to do something. It was a budget thing, and they said he couldn't do it. So because in the Youngstown Steel case back ages and ages ago, when Harry Truman tried to put all the steel company under federal control by issuing an executive order, what the Supreme Court came out and said is there are a bunch of different kinds of deference and different kinds of scrutiny when it comes to executive orders, and we will give the president, as the executive officer, wide latitude, a lot of deference if his executive order references or somehow kind of like clarifies the enforcement of a duly passed piece of legislation by Congress. So, like in the executive order sending troops into Afghanistan, that went back to the Armed Services Act that Congress passed when we went to war with Afghanistan. That's why, and Iraq didn't have to declare war, but like the Constitution says, it's all that kind of stuff. So if the president were to come out and issue an executive order saying we're going to confiscate all the weapons, well, Congress hasn't passed that legislation. And so what would happen is that someone would sue, probably you, maybe Mr. Shaw, or
I joined Tom in that.
Yeah, whatever sort of like class action lawsuit, someone would sue to nullify that executive order. The Supreme Court would look at it and say, hey, look, we're going to give this really strict scrutiny because there was no duly passed legislation. The executive order goes way past what's allowed by the Constitution, as we have interpreted it in the Heller case from a few years ago. Therefore, we're going to strike the executive order. And so the president can, and this is just to throw a little bit of water on the whole uproar about what he said, if the president goes out and does something that has, that's why he's pushing Congress to enact the legislation. Just from a politics 101 standpoint, if you want to stop the president from doing the executive order, you got to put pressure on your legislators not to go along with any of the bills that are being introduced. That's the main thing. It's not a dictatorial move by the president. Presidents give executive orders all the time.
Well, but Tom, we are with Tom Shaw, a representative from District 10. If Obama does issue these edicts from on high, then,
which I just explained, go ahead.
Would you be introducing a bill like they have up in Montana or
in Wyoming?
Yeah, in Wyoming.
It is already in drafting, and I asked them to change Wyoming to Iowa where it pertains.
So it'll be exactly like that?
Exactly like Wyoming.
Do you think you have enough votes to get that passed?
I don't know yet.
Because I know there's a lot of conservative Democrats in the Iowa Senate and in the Iowa House that are, lifetime NRA members. Mm-hmm. And, Leonard Boswell, who, was a fairly conservative Democrat up until Nancy Pelosi took over, he was a lifetime NRA member and consistently voted against any kind of gun legislation. Do you think that there's any chance that would be able to get passed with those conservative Democrats?
It's possible. I just don't know. I haven't had a chance to talk to enough of my colleagues about it.
Okay.
We're just getting the session started, so I don't know. But I've got the bill requested to be drafted, and we'll go from there and just see what we can do.
Now, you like firearms. I like firearms. I hang out with some quote gun nuts, end quote, And I can tell you the word that they say is, nobody's coming and getting my guns. I will head to the hills and start a civil war. Do you hear that with your friends, or am I just in a radical fringe group?
I hear that from not only all over my district, but from all over Iowa. Being in law enforcement, I talk to a lot of, the street patrol officers and deputies from around Iowa, and talking about gun confiscation, and I get the same kind of standard reply of, well, who's going to take them? Who's going to confiscate them? I've heard from a lot of law enforcement, military personnel. They're like, we would not participate in that whatsoever. Yeah, you do get some chest thumping out there. I don't know what would happen. I think it's a very dangerous path to go down for a president to even think about superseding the Bill of Rights with executive orders. And that's what we're talking about, the Bill of Rights. Because if he can do that to the Second Amendment, then he can turn around and say, and anyone that protests against my order, First Amendment wise, I'm going to arrest you and lock you up. And the chain reaction starts. And I want to confiscate your weapons, and I don't want to have to do a search warrant. So there goes our Fourth Amendment rights. I mean, an attack on one of those Bill of Rights is an attack on all of them. And I just think that's very dangerous for the president to even be considering that.
All right. Well, we got to wrap our show up. I want to say thanks to Lefty for keeping his opinions to himself for a bit, because I could tell he's just chewing at the bit.
Hey,
chewing at it.
What we want to make sure that Republican and Democratic legislators feel very comfortable coming on our show.
That's right. And if you could ever get a Democratic legislator to show up, I'd be. All you got to do is
I never ran for Congress.
Well, all right, you got me on that one. maybe you should take on Tom Latham.
I'm a baby.
Yeah. So we want to thank Tom Shaw for showing up at short notice. I always enjoy talking to you. I like following you on Facebook, so thank you very much for showing up.
You're welcome.
We'll be back here. I will not be back here next week. Hopefully they'll be able to Skype me in. I will be in the lovely Maui Island at a medical conference. Blake will be on his own. Hopefully he'll do something political instead of musical.
It was the best show that we did when I did that.
Oh, I don't know.
I got a lot of comments.
Frank, was that the best show ever?
I'd rather not take sides.
Yeah. Oh my God. Oh my God. All right. But anyway, we're hoping I can Skype in next week. We'll have something going on. And then what I'm hoping is that next week, Blake will actually have her theme song written and
I'm working
produced.
on it.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll be here next week at 6 p.m. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. And thank you, Tom, for showing up.
You're welcome.
Evening.